Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a great presentation with our business coach, Jaap Siekman. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pascal Hansen. I'm the CEO and financial strategist at Zeta, and I'm also a tech chair for Tech Canada. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce the topic and get started.
All right. We're going to talk about operational and organizational change management for people that want to grow their business or want to get ready for succession. Just a little bit about myself, so you sort of know where I'm coming from. I'm an engineer by education. Some years ago, I got my project management professional. I've worked in all kinds of different industries, from submarines to trains, the steel industry, gas purification, lighting, glass. I had my own company for a little while. Then I moved into government funding, and eventually I started as an independent business coach in 2019. As a business coach, I work with business owners on the operations and the organization. So what I refer to as the internal workings of the business. This presentation is, as it was announced, it's about business owners that are concerned about the fact that they want to grow the business, but they don't know how, or they want to retire, but the business is not ready. It's not ready for succession. It's not ready for sale. And so how do you change that? When you then, dive a little deeper, you will find all kinds of issues that they're dealing with. The owner themselves, there's a lot of stress. They're overworked. It's a long time that they have been on vacation. They have hiring and retention problems. They have all kinds of financial issues around productivity, profitability, debt. There may be quality issues, customer complaints, long lead times. And above all, they say nothing here happens without my involvement, my daily involvement. And that is a critical thing, which as a little bit of a side note, affects the value of the business. So, if an owner is ready to sell the business and they talk to a broker, the broker looks at the business, or in terms of determining the value of a business, the broker will look at the financial performance, the revenue, the margins, growth potential, all that kind of things. They will also look at product and market issues. What is the competitive advantage of the business? Are the customers happy? Is there brand recognition? Is there reliance on select clients? If 80% of the business comes from 20% of the clients, that is a little bit of a red flag. But the third, big thing here is the reliance on the owner. And we see that a lot, that you have a business and the business cannot really run without the owner being there every day. And that's something that, I see a lot with my clients and that we work on resolving. There was a Jen Bockwald. She was an accountant with MNP, and I talked to her a couple of years ago, and she came up with this great quote. The more valuable you are for your business, the less value your business has. And so, if that is the case, how do we change that, and what do we change? This is really where I go in with my system, being a three-step approach to change. And this is very much the same as when you take a trip and you open up Google Maps. What do you do in the preparation to go somewhere? First of all, you identify your current state, or where are you right now on the map. So in the business case, this is the current state of your business. It's your weaknesses. What is it where you are right now? The next step is, where do you want to go? What's your destination? In business, know your vision for the business. What's your big, hairy, audacious goal? Where do you want to take this business, and why? And then, once you know where you are, where you want to go, how do you get there? What's your action plan? And so we create actionable tasks, improvement projects, everything that we need to do to get you from A to B. And everybody, if there's any questions, then please, ask me. I, very much appreciate interactivity, questions, discussions, and everything. It's much more fun than me just sitting here and talk. So what can you do under step one, your current state assessments? So first of all, you got to know your current organizational structure. So this is where we talk about org charts. And quite often I bring up the following picture because it does ring a bell with a lot of people. Which company is more valuable? This company A, where John is everywhere, all over the place, and June, this is just a coincidence that I have John here. Or company B, where John is the president and John has other people in the positions for all the work that needs to be done. It's very obvious that the answer is company B, and nobody has ever given me the wrong answer. The reality, however, is that when I go in and I meet clients for the first time, the company generally looks more like company A, unfortunately. So what we do is, and what you can do in your own situation is, draw up your own org chart. And the question there, or the critical question there is, the people in the boxes, this Marielle and Danny and Mandeep, are they responsible for the work that they are doing, or are they accountable? And the difference is subtle, but it's critical. So when you're responsible, you are doing the work. You have been assigned the task and you own the task. When you are accountable, you are assigned to make sure that the work gets done. You own the result. So it happens quite often, when I sit down with a client and we are drawing up this org chart, and I ask the question, okay, who's in charge of sales here? That the owner says, well, that's Danny. Okay, so how do you work with Danny? Do you basically tell him in the morning what to do? Or does Danny know his objectives for sales? He knows all the tools and he got his mandate and he is a self-starter and he goes about doing his job, and he does whatever he needs to do in order to, get the sales, for example. And then quite often the answer is, well, I basically tell Danny what to do. So that means that Danny is actually not really the sales manager. He is a staff member under sales, but John is actually the sales manager. And so what we see that quite often is that, although in the first instance, we think that the picture looked like this, it's actually more like company A, where John is running the show with help. And that's actually a term that I use quite often. Do you really have a business, or are you self-employed with help? And that's a situation that we want to change in that case. So you write up your org chart the way that you think it looks like at that moment. That's your current org chart. There's a Gino Wickman from Traction. I got the book behind me here. He says you can have one name in two seats, but you cannot have two names in one seat. So having two names in one seat, I see that quite often as well. It's like, okay, who's taking care of your operations? Well, that's sort of me and Todd. Well, who is it? Because can you imagine, the Titanic, you got two captains and it's like, hey, there's an iceberg. And the one says, turn left. The other one says, turn right. And then it's boom, collision with the iceberg. So we don't want that. So you do have to have one person in a box. Know your current process. This is where you can use a process map. This is a great tool to visualize your process. You're going one step at a time. The tools that you're using, the output that you're creating. This is a brainstorm that you do with a team. And, it happens always, when you are doing this brainstorm, that people will come up with weaknesses. They will point out issues that they have. There are discrepancies. One person's like, okay, are you doing it this way? Because I'm doing it differently. So while we are writing up the process map, you can identify weaknesses. You can identify, maybe quick wins or areas where you can start improving things. This looks very messy, and it's on purpose because this is a very first draft and doesn't need to look nice. but it's very effective in visualizing your process. Third component of knowing your current state is really know what your people are thinking. And this is probably one of the easiest, the most fun things that you can do. Whenever people say, "Yeah, I don't know what my people are thinking," maybe we need to bring in Deloitte and do a $50,000 study. You don't need all that. Just get a group of people together, put a chart on the wall, like what you see here, an Ishikawa diagram or a fishbone diagram, give them a bunch of stickies and ask them the question, what can we do better here? Tell us everything that you don't like about the business, about the work that you're doing, all the things that are going wrong. And you will have a very lively discussion. So generally, I do these with first with the management team, if there is one, and then I do one with staff without management in the room. So the picture here is with a bunch of electricians, the management, they were out of the building, and you get great discussions. People are very open. They're very proud of the work that they do, and they want to do a better job. And so they share, with you a lot of the things that they don't like about the business. And so we use stickies. They write down one topic per sticky, and you sort of group them. You discuss them with everybody to get more insight in what they mean. And then you put them on this diagram where it's a fishbone diagram. So you see the head of the fish, the spine, and then some of the bones. And we can use the bones to sort of group the topics in certain areas. So space, there was no constant space in this case, but space, that is the building, it's the workshop, it's the area where people are working. There can be issues around materials and tools and equipment, HR, your processes and your systems, management, or other stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else. This particular example, this was reasonable, but I have had situations where basically you can't see the original paper anymore. It's just covered in stickies. These sessions generally take about 2 hours, and then you have a lot of information. Pascal, you got a question?
I do have a question. So I'm just curious how management took the feedback. So I can see in this case, I can see some stickers saying, the track is unsafe. We need more tools.
Yep.
So just playing devil's advocate, I might look at that going, oh, I don't want to spend money on that.
No, excellent question, Pascal. Thanks for asking. It's probably, and I put a post on this a little while ago. I think that my biggest my most interesting finding, after having done a few dozen of these, has been that when I start working with a business and I start talking to management, they mention all these issues that they have in the business, and they have sort of these complaints. I mean, that's a big word, but they talk about their personnel and the things that they do wrong, or things that do go wrong in the shop, or the processes that they have implemented, and the guys are not following those. So they're sort of pointing to the staff for some of the shortcomings in the business. And then when I sit down with the staff, they have a lot of the same complaints. These guys, they are proud of their work. They want to do a good job. They want to do a better job, but it's management that is in the way for them of doing that.
So you have
And
to play mediators. How do you
oh no, well, actually, mediator, it's actually not, no, it's not even that, because what what the finding is that everybody wants the same. I mean, there's like 95% alignment between the objectives of management and the staff. They wanna have, they want to make a better company, and they want their job to be good, and they want easier processes. They don't want stress. Nobody wants stress, right? And everything that happens or does not happen, it just adds stress and frustration. So there may be some surprises here and there, but at the end of the day, both parties are aligned in that they want to improve the business.
So you
And the
make them
way,
see the light and they're actually on the same page, even though they're pointing fingers the other way.
exactly,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly. And so it has been a very, very interesting journey in finding this, that yes, there is complete alignment. And of course, yeah, there is a few things, sometimes where, you have one guy that is sort of focusing on, not trivial HR issues, but yes, they want more pay, they want more vacation, they want more this, they want more that. And those are important things to consider. We have to pay our people, right. But in the grand scheme of things of growing the business, they are less important, I would say. But it's always good when folks bring them up so that we are aware.
Thank you.
But yeah, as you can see in the picture here, these guys, I handed out the stickies, and they're writing down. They're writing down their topics, and so generally I give them about 10 minutes, and then this whole discussion starts, and it usually takes about 2 hours of lively interactions. So these are really, really great. So with the org chart, with the process map, with the open brainstorm, we have a pretty good feel for where the company sits at that time. And so then it's time to start, thinking about your future state. What's your vision for the business? So this is where, transformation map is a great template. Um, People know about business plans and strategic plans. They are great for when you need to go to the bank for money, but otherwise they don't do much. They're big stacks of paper. Nobody reads those, just for fun. Transformation map is a one-page overview of where you want to take your business. We have the current state at the lower left. We've got the future state over here. And the first step is to talk about your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. It's not a term that I came up with myself, has been in existence for years. So this is really the question, to the owner: what is it that you want to achieve with this business? What is your timeline for this? So in this case, somebody came up with 2033, which is like 10 years from now. And you try to write down what it is that you want to achieve. So yeah, usually there is a goal for revenue, there's a goal for net margin. In this case, service location is sort of a way to get to $100 million revenue, and the business should be sellable. Now, this is far in the future, so we want to make this a little bit more tangible. So the question, first of all, we put some reference in here with the current state. So right now we're doing 5 million, and we want to go to 100 million. So that's good growth. But then the next question is, okay, 3 years from now or 2 years, that's a good time frame to make that BHAG a little bit more realistic, closer by. So what is it that you want to do or have achieved in 3 years from now? So again, some revenue margin goals that will get you from the 5 to the 100. And then there's this box: have a management team that can run the business independently. That's basically a box that's always there. That's, because the owners that I work with, they're the owners that are, stalled in their growth. This is what they're lacking. And so that's a major focal point for their efforts in changing the business. The next step then is to go and to set, realistic and achievable 1-year goals. And this is where we start to look at not just corporate level, but we look at the different departments in the business, the different areas. So, your marketing, your sales, operations, finance, HR, technology, corporate goals. Sometimes, for some businesses, partners and alliances are extremely important, and they warrant a separate approach. ESG, environmental, social, governance, not so much of interest for most small business. But sometimes your community, for example, is, when you have a very community-oriented business that is, reliant on your neighbors and the people in town, then you want to put some effort around the community and how you want to engage with your community. It's sort of part of marketing, but it is so specific that sometimes it warrants to think about that separately. So having this, we think a little bit about high-level strategies and one-year goals related to each of these areas. Then to even make it more to the point, we can add some rocks, which is another standard term. I have no idea where that comes from, but they stand for 3-month 3-month goals. And so having some 3-month goals in place, they are really good to get you focused on some projects that will get you to your 1-year goal. And then last but not least, you can identify in some cases, things that are of the most importance to you. So this is your transformation map. It's a 1-page, and as you can see, when you have this down on paper, you can share this with anybody, and they will look at this for a few minutes, and they will understand what it is that you want to achieve with your business. And also when they are working anywhere here in the business, they can understand what their role is going to be in this and the opportunities that may come out of this. So it's a great tool to communicate the vision, your vision for the business. So now we know where we're coming from, we know where we want to go to. Then it's time for your action plan. Action plan, at this stage, it's a long list of tasks, projects that you want to or need to execute, and that will come that are coming out of all the findings that you have retrieved from the previous exercises. The question then is, okay, how do we record all this? So you can simply use paper, you can use a Kanban board, Excel, but these days with online, many online platforms, I prefer to use one of these. Most of my clients, they go with my recommendation to go with Asana because it's a good tool that matches the proper functionality that you need with the fact that it is free for I think up to 15 seats, and it gives you everything that you need to do this effectively. So basically, we take all the findings and we drop them here in Asana in this case. So this is just a screenshot of the Asana board of a client. And then the question, of course, is now what? We have an action list, but how do we move forward? This is where it's good to understand that about 70% of change programs fail. And that is astounding, and it's frustrating, and it's not necessary. There's a guy called John Kotter. He is a bit of a guru in terms of organizational and operational change. He's done this for decades in the States with, well, probably international, with a lot of large companies. And he tracked, change programs, and the ones that failed and the ones that were successful. And he looked at the difference. What were people doing to make change programs successful? And he came up with this 8-step model for change, where he's like, okay, if you do these things, you have a reasonable chance for your program to be successful. So the first set of things here is all about creating a vision and communicating that vision, with your staff. And this is where that transformation map comes in, and it's so important because it does show that picture. If there is some urgency, then absolutely share that as well. So, for example, Blockbuster, when streaming was coming up, they should have done one of these exercises, and their sense of urgency was, of course, clear. If we don't change, we're going to go disappear. The second set is about enabling or engaging with your people and enabling them and empowering them to action. So this is where, for example, having that team brainstorm in the beginning is a great way because it engages them, it makes them part of the whole effort. Having a team that will run your continuous improvement instead of just you as the owner. An NCR process, which is non-conformance reporting process, is a great way to say, okay, anytime that anything goes wrong in the business, then just start an NCR, a non-conformance report, and that will then lead to changing the process. So it enables people to bring in their concerns and start changing the process according to them and make their life easier. The third component is then, once we have all these findings, to start making changes very quickly, creating quick wins, and then keeping that momentum and making it stick. Make sure that whatever you implement stays active and is actually effective. There's the I did put the symbol in there. I'm not going to talk about it here, but that's your plan, do, check, act, the Deming cycle, which is a great tool to make sure that processes, when you implement them, that they are actually working. Pascal, you had another question.
I do. Do you have an example of what a quick win would be and how to make it stick?
Generally, yeah, well, yes. I mean, there's quite a few, and I will sort of actually, touch on that later. But for example, when I do a brainstorm with the staff, one comment that I hear quite often is, I don't really know who my boss is, which is astounding, of course, but it's the reality. And so a quick win is, to draw up the org chart and to clarify, who is who.
Right.
And post that org chart, or share that with your staff. Like, this is what the org chart looked like, and so you can see on the org chart who your boss is. That clears that up, very quickly.
Right.
Sometimes it is, small process changes, but we'll talk about that in on the next slide.
Okay, thanks.
Ta-da! So yeah, those quick wins. So, phase one is the whole discovery, the whole discovery that I just talked about. Phase two is your quick wins. So generally, it is revising or developing your org chart and writing it down and sharing that. It's writing down the job descriptions, coming up with a management meeting structure. So that means, you have your org chart, you have a vertical structure, you got a horizontal structure, with all the departments, and you got to make sure that people are talking to each other in a way that everything gets aligned. So projects get executed, but also between the departments, there is sufficient communication to make sure that the company moves forward. And so putting a clear structure for those meetings in place is really, really helpful. KPI dashboard. KPIs are key performance indicators. Having a KPI dashboard is a really good start, or is a really good way to understand how the company is doing. And when so having numbers is one thing, but having numbers in a chart, in a line chart that shows you the trends of, for example, your backlog. Is your backlog going up or is it going down? If it's going down, the number itself may be still good, but if the chart shows that your numbers are going down, you know that you're going to have a problem that you need to take some actions. So putting a KPI dashboard in place is I consider that a quick win to start running and managing your business from numbers. And then usually, during all those brainstorms, people come up with some simple irritants, in terms of processes that can be fixed very, very quickly. So usually what I see is that the most common first step, towards an owner's freedom, reducing that reliance or starting to reduce that reliance, is to have that org chart, is to promote key staff in managerial positions. And so this is where an owner can start delegating some accountability to others, and then to have very clear job descriptions. And this is really, where, in my humble opinion, there's a little bit of magic, coming from the tools that we're using. So when we have an org chart, we have the process map with what we call swim lanes. This is the supervisor swim lane with whatever he needs to do. We can take basically this whole swim lane that we identified early on and drop everything that this supervisor needs to do in his job description or her job description. And this is where, these three things, these components, value or the process map, the org chart, and the job descriptions, they are all aligned, and they make it absolutely clear that, okay, this person, he's sitting here in the org chart, and this is what he does. And this is how he interacts with the other people within the business and within the process. Any questions on this? Because I always find this quite an exciting stage when people have these components in place. It creates a lot of clarity in terms of the job of people. Okay, I'll move on. So after we have implemented some of these quick wins, now the hard work starts around continuously improving the business, and keeping that momentum going. And this is where we touch on everything in the business, from management development. So appointing somebody to become a supervisor is one thing, but to make sure that the person is actually thriving and performing in that position is another thing. That needs a lot of coaching. So how do you do that? There's going to be a lot of work around quality management, your work processes, checklists, standard operating procedures or SOPs, operational things, training program. I have a book behind me here, Becoming the Supervisor by Hugh Alley. And in there, he has a training matrix that shows all the staff that you have and all the areas that require training. It can be separate operations, it can be equipment, it can be the safety issues. And then in the table itself, you identify to what degree people are trained or whether they need to be trained or not. And it is a very simple tool, but I've implemented that with several clients, and they thought it was the best ever because it shows you in one sheet again what the status is of the training of your staff. You can see certain people, they haven't been trained on much, so they need more training. But it also shows you that, okay, on this CNC machine, we actually only have one person that is trained on this. That's a liability. This person gets sick, the CNC machine is down. So we need other people to be trained on this machine. Simple tool, very, very effective in upping the skills of your workforce. So other areas of improvement, your finance, your HR, so quite often employee contracts and handbooks, they haven't been, very well defined or described, or they don't exist at all. Technology, of course, always comes up, so do you need a CRM? Do you need an ERP? Do you need, inventory management as part of your ERP? So is there technology that can help you improve your processes? Project management is a whole different beast. I have a 2.5 hour workshop on this, and it just teaches, or it educates people a little bit about the basics of project management, because in a lot of smaller business, project management is not well developed, and people do whatever they think is project management, but there's a lot of room for improvement there. And so this list is endless, all depending on what you have defined in your business as being the weaknesses. We start improving that. There's this, I mentioned Gino Wickman earlier. So out of Traction, or the enterprise operating system, then the book is behind me as well. Gino Wickman is a great proponent of this very fixed and strict review rhythm, where every month you look at your action plans and you do an update. Every quarter, you go back to your transformation map and you look at those rocks, because after 3 months, these rocks, they should have been completed. If they have not, then adjust them. But if they have, take them off and then identify what's next. and then go back to your action plan and make the changes there. And then, very important, every year, the ownership or the senior management, they really need to sit together and, go through the whole thing again and say, okay, do we still agree with, our big audacious goal, or do we want to change something? The 3-year goals, they should be updated. The 1-year goals, they should be new goals. And so every year, the ownership, they should come up with a new vision for the business. And then again, that should be shared with the staff so that they know we're making progress and this is how we are moving forward. So these plans, they are not static. We talk about, well, you probably know the term SMART goals. They need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And having SMART goals doesn't mean that you cannot change them, right? So once in a while, you need to evaluate and readjust your goals, which makes them smarter. Evaluate and readjust, which is different, just as sidestepping a little bit, from people that are suffering from SOS or the shiny object syndrome, that think that every day, there's something better. So stay away from that, because it's going to kill you and your business. But don't think that your goals should be static. You need to go back to them once in a while and readjust. So I'll share with you 2 examples of clients, and if you're in a position, then this could be you. So this is Enrique. I've been working with him for a few years now, and a while ago he was non-responsive. I had sent him several emails and I didn't hear back from him, and then suddenly he got back. Turned out he was on vacation. He went to Spain and Morocco, touring around on his motorcycle, had a great time. And I asked him, like, what happened when you got back? And he's like, well, I checked in with my management team, asked some questions, any problems? And it's like, no, what are you doing here? And there was no problem. And so I asked him, would you have been able to do this like 2 years ago? And he's like, no, absolutely not. I could have gone, but then upon my return, it would be just mayhem, inbox loaded, problems, all over the place. Absolutely, massive difference. And so, to summarize, what happened in the big picture, he had a BHAG for revenue in 2028 that he set in 2022. And for this year, he's already exceeding that by 2.5 times. So massive, massive growth in terms of revenue. And now he needs to keep up with that growth, of course. But, this guy has been doing everything right in terms of, putting a team in place, creating the processes, and relying on that team to run the business. And his biggest, complaint at one point was like, I feel sort of like I'm not needed anymore. I guess that's the luxury problem. Second example here is a company that had a problem with their lead times to a degree that they couldn't really grow their business. Underlying root cause was that it was a retention issue. So I was there at the beginning of last year, and out of the 10 shop guys that they had hired the year before, 9 had left. So if you have rotation like this, you cannot run a business, and the lead times for new product had increased to 2 to 4 years, which was absolutely not acceptable, and everybody was overworked and frustrated. So they went through the whole process of creating their vision, putting down their org chart. We did all those brainstorms. They did their process map. We had one-to-ones with key personnel, and then we started changing things. Well, really, they started changing things. They identified their roles and their responsibilities. There was a complaint about one key manager that was, aggressive in his behavior and in his communication, and that was addressed. They implemented that training matrix that I mentioned earlier, and that was a massive help in improving training practices, and making sure that all the processes and everything had people that could conduct those. Management meetings were structured, which they started to change various processes to ease and smooth and structure the information flow, as part of the job execution. And then they also had the buyer promoted to manage their 5S program and inventory. Now, I'm not sure whether you are familiar with 5S, but if you are familiar with Marie Kondo, she goes in people's homes and help them with cleaning up the home and organizing stuff. 5S is really Marie Kondo for industry. So it's really 5S is about organizing the workspace, your tools, everything that you have, and making sure that everything is accessible for people. And so having this buyer promoted to manage inventory and 5S just created a lot of clarity as who is accountable for this. And this guy, he went about and started changing stuff there and cleaning stuff up. So these were things that they implemented very quickly. And they saw their morale just go up very rapidly within 1 or 2 months. The production started to improve. And now with everything in place and everything that they have done after, their vision going from 5 to 100 million or something, it's still a big vision, but I have no doubt that they can now achieve that actually. Where in the beginning it was like, okay, this is a tall order. So summarizing, reducing the reliance of the business on the owner's daily involvement, and then build value in your business, enabling growth, enabling succession or sale. It's really having the organizational structure clear, having the accountabilities and responsibilities of your staff, truly nailed down. Management practices, they should be effective, efficient. All your work processes, your SOPs, checklists, all that should be in place. Having systems, technology to support all this. It makes stuff a lot more effective. And so with these things, you are on your way to become a successful business, to be able to grow it, and eventually, possibly, if that's your goal, to sell it. And that was the last slide.
I think that was great. I love how organized a lot of the stuff is, like the one pagers, as opposed to a binder full of paper nobody looks at after they've paid a consultant 50 grand for it. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, the acronym SPOTS. It's the strategic plan on the top shelf.
Oh, okay. I never heard that one. That's good. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's a true thing, right? It's a strategic plan, business plan. It's a booklet, and somebody writes it, and there's so much blah blah in there, nobody really looks at it. If you give that to your staff, it does not, motivate them.
Well, thanks again, Yap. It's a pleasure as always. And for everyone here, Yap is one of our Elevate experts. So Elevate is an online course we have for business owners. So you can check it out on zetacorp.com. There is a 14-day free trial. Yap has about 3 or 4 lessons in there as well, if you want to go check that out.
Right on.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Pascal.